Welcome. I'll allow, if you wish to get on, introduce yourself. You're always welcome to say hello and where you have tuned in from. My name is Josie, and I'm really excited and honored to commence these classes here on YouTube for my desire to deschool and to share further ways of subtle energy study together, where we can acknowledge some certain maybe tenets or agreements about energy and take it from there. Know that many things that come up in the study of subtle energy will most definitely change over time. And I think that's what has encouraged and excited me about studying subtle energy for so many years, is that it is always a most definite humbling experience in discovering how we can further potentially rectify or shift language around how we speak about energy to support further communication, further rectification of ways that have not supported life on these planes. I think I dove it right in actually with that introduction. And let's take some moments to first connect. For in learning and discussing energy, of course, we'll be sharing, or you will also be choosing to receive potentially energy. What I've discovered in sharing sometimes of concepts behind subtle energy is that in discussing them, we actually sense them, we experience them within us. So to check in and first see if this is something that you are willing to participate in today, and to acknowledge the whole purpose of deschooling these educational classes is to share that there is no time limit, meaning that if you feel the need to step away and then to come back again, to know that these will be held up on replay for further reviewing, re-listening at times when you so choose. And like any live class that we take, of course, know that there will be a limit in time. I have agreed for these classes to be about an hour and a half in length. Since this is the first kind of introductory welcome class, like any course, it may be a little shorter in time, just to more so explain the process of learning and the classes to come. So I hope you do have some water. I realize my water is in like this massive bottle today, so don't mind me as I take a sip. To see what you need to support your learning. For the learning process, as I shared on, I believe it's on, I've now started a playlist called Live Energy Study or Energy Study. And you'll see there is also one where I share on Reiki as well as the learning process. That will be a kind of a great experiential practice, for that is like in depth of channeling, to discover how our brain and capacity of taking in more information kind of works, and how to support the process that it takes to move from where we feel we always learn things, which is just in our mind or in our head, and to see how we can slowly allow some of that, the containment of the energy from within our head to potentially move down into our body, so it can be a fuller experience to honor and support potential cleansing, clearing, and many things. How are you? How are you as we meet today? This may be simply a space for you to breathe. And to know that, unlike maybe classes we've taken in more systemic learning styles or educational systems, you will not be applauded if you follow the tenets of good studentship. To know that you do not have to listen intently through the whole process to receive. You do not have to understand every single thing being said and shared all at once. And to trust that many things can be chewed upon, regurgitated, and even spit out over time. I look forward and invite conversation within the classes, but even in between, in our reviewals. You're welcome to share further comments in, even if you're not here live, but in the comments section of this video. As well, for further study prompts, you can join as a free member on my Patreon, where we can continue further conversations there. In prepping for this class, this first one, of course, now you have to see that if you're newer to my channel or newer to what I share, you'll see that I've offered many things on this YouTube channel leading up to these classes. Much of my gifts that I carry of connection to ancestors, as well as divination practices to support our rhythms and movements over time. Meditations, breathing practices, other energetic practices, experiential practices. And so there is always a sweet encouragement to know that if those things are still up on my YouTube, for I do edit and alter certain things over time, that you're welcome to choose and select those as needed and take space from the classes that might share in-depth information. How have you learned previously of energy? We tend to learn of subtle energy through different modalities and different methods. My practices in probably the past 30 some odd years or so, for sure, were initiated through meditation and the many branches and studious practices within yoga. From there, they led also into studying in depth the Reiki system of Mikao Usui, as well as the simple symbols and understandings and ways to incorporate larger amounts of information within contemplation over many, many years. So my hope with these practices and classes shared is that they can support us in our lifelong studies, in our lifelong learning ground. To acknowledge that subtle energy is not something that we have to be an expert in order to allow some of the things explored to shift our actions, our ways and perspectives. And so I'm curious, and I place this first question out to you. And you don't necessarily have to answer it right now. This may be something that we continue to query about. Not all questions need to have distinct answers. And so the first question I wrote down today was why? Why study subtle energy? Why study about the energies that move, that breathe, and that we share of as life energy. Why study of things most subtle and potentially quite sacred in a more public way together? If certain things come, you are always welcome to share within the chat too, if questions have arisen for you to bring in. And know that all questions are welcomed. So let's take a moment with those questions. And enjoy some minutes simply of breath. For breath is energy, yes. The breathing cycle is probably the simplest way of connecting to the things most subtle, as well as the things most formed. The breath and how we bring our breath into the process can support of how we bring our awareness or our focus to something. And yes, our breath in itself shares a wondrous moving energy that may have been denoted as vibrational, inspirational, welcome. Ooh, thank you for bringing in some questions already. Excellent. Thank you. I will see how that weaves in. Know that these initial questions that you might share in the chat, just like how I share some, are simply like the things that we are scattering into the experience. And we can see how they're addressed. And I trust that within an hour and a half, we may not access all the things today. And that's the beauty, because then we get to connect and take some space away, allow for our own practices and processes, and then potentially step back and come back into meeting again. As we breathe, instead of trying to find the scientific acknowledgement of breath or even the certain methods or ways that you have been taught to breathe, just simply allow yourself to accommodate the awareness of your breath, to see how you are choosing to breathe at this time, and to acknowledge that there is no wrong choice. You are breathing. It's sweet. You might see me closing my eyes as I facilitate this initial connection, but to know that you do not have to necessarily close your eyes to connect and become aware of your breath. You may simply wish to touch your body, to feel how breath moves areas of your body and being, to allow that level of curiosity to see, well, maybe I naturally accommodate my hand to my chest to feel my chest breathing and opening and expanding, to maybe move that hand to an area where you might not normally feel breath go, and to bring your awareness there. To maybe even bring your hand to areas where you might feel your breath go or energy start to appear. Maybe it's a pressure, a containment, or an expansion. But to allow yourself to be a little tactile at present. to explore areas of gentle pressure where hand and body meet as you simply breathe. To observe if you are guided to try to push or move breath towards the area that you have connected to. And to even play with your mind, to bring your hand to an area that you feel does not breathe, like a knee bone, an ankle bone, a hip. And as much as you may be focused on how does breath feel there, or how is my experience of breathing now, and to maintain that focus like a good student, you may become aware that other things come in to the level of awareness as we breathe. It's as if we accommodate what we have become aware of within that body and hand response, as well as potentially sounds outside of us. They can be part of the experience too. Become aware of a sound outside of you, to see if it makes areas of your body close or expand, to shift the pressure of your hand to different places of your body as needed. And that level of curiosity to simply go, how can I accommodate me breathing, me moving, me feeling, whilst other things around me breathing, moving, discover if this makes you feel a little insignificant or quite significant. Can you honor both? How can your life energy, how can your breathing and being and presence be accommodated amidst all the things moving and breathing and being in you, and maybe even around? Become aware of your mind. Is it trying to focus on one thing or to broaden? Does it feel one way is better than the other way? How is your mind over efforting as we breathe together. How can you loosen the reins? To soften the inner gaze or the outer intent. For yes, as we become more and more and more aware of things, we get good at defining those things. So enjoy some of the things right now that you can define are occurring around you. I hear the sound of crickets outside my window, footfalls, movements of water in the pipes, cars. See, there's so many things we can define, even within a minute. But see, if each thing that you define and become aware of, give yourself some space between listing another and another and another. Let yourself almost welcome that aspect in. For each thing that we welcome in may bring even more things with it. And you may come to a point of definitions that there are so many things now to experience and define that it may even feel like it becomes a bit of a soup inside. So see if you simply can allow that soup, those things that were all denoted and defined as different things, to simply blur together. To feel part of a larger movement, a collated or conglomerated movement of energies. Start to feel the rhythm of that larger movement as much as you can accommodate within. Back with how you're breathing. Is agreeing or disagreeing with many things in. And maybe in agreeance or disagreeance with many things out. To honor what areas may harden at times. And what places may soften. And in that collation, or that beautiful sea of multiple moving things, defined, multiple sounds, and even the things moving that don't make sound. Just feel the rhythm of that ocean. To hear the cacophony of that harmony. At times, there may be so many things to become aware of, or that may draw your attention. Will be as if there is no space between. Breathe deeper to stoke your breath. To even add some more sound instead of trying to find the place of silence. To see now, even if you had your eyes softened, or even if you had your eyes closed, to see if you can even open your eyes and still be within that sea. That's a practice and a process. A practice of presence. It is not necessarily negating anything, nor either affirming, but simply honoring what or where your attention goes. To acknowledge in these types of study and practice that there may be times that you'll wish to listen or learn while lying down, cozied up under a comfortable cover, maybe with less ways of sensating the things around you. To know at times if that sea of energy and information that's moving around as well as inside of us feels too chaotic, too much. To trust then that you can find headphones or an eye mask, a hat, or something to cover the areas that might feel extra sensitive today. To acknowledge that each time you may process that experience or choose to step back into that experience, you may have a different experience. And that is just a little bit of what I may share you could expect in studying most subtle, is to be aware that it carries both what's in form, what's been defined, as well as what is not formed, not defined. It may include things that feel known or a part of a knowing within us that might feel quite resonant or ping or ripple or bring expansive feelings of and there may be at times things that feel a little off, dissonant. And they ask of us to see, can we still breathe? Before, how have we been taught before? To question why. Why is that off? What's wrong? Why did my mind go here? What happened to my body here? Why am I feeling that thing in my knee? Why am I feeling this thing, right? We have been taught to bring all those queries into the now, into the initial present experience, and potentially then to feel that if we bring further information, further knowledge, now I understand my knee superbly. I went and I studied anatomy. I went and delved into all these books to understand how joints work. And I, you know what I mean? And pulled all of that information apart. So now I know 100% how this bone connects to this bone and moves with these muscles. And if now I have a twinge or a feeling or a sensation in that area that I have denoted as my body in space, then I will already know. I will already have answers here. I will already have an awareness that can then soothe the potential experience in presence. That can make me feel a bit easier to accommodate going the pain, the discomfort, or the pleasure that I am experiencing now. Oh, this is getting okay. Getting juicy. For yes, why study subtle energy? I think the most joyous thing about me discovering that, I was like, oh, this is the one thing I have studied for decades, like for my entire life. I would just always was going like, what, like, how do things like the things that we have defined as real or defined as such or defined as specific things or have given us all these answers, right? Like I wanted to figure out that. I wanted to figure out, why am I feeling this pain now? Oh, bless you, Bart. Why am I feeling this discomfort now? Why am I feeling this annoyance now? Why am I feeling this peace? So that then potentially we could replicate that experience again and again and again. So then it's like, now I'm going to have the keys and the answers to continuously feel ease within my body, because now I know how my joints move and I know where my mind goes. And I've dealt with looking into the psyche of my mind and figured out that, this is like a certain thing that this therapist shares, or this psychiatrist, or this literature has given me. And one thing that I loved about the process of studying subtle energy for this very, very keen and let's say incredibly studious student of this process was that it was like, guess what, Jose? There's never going to be a finite answer. There is never going to be an answer that will be like, that will flatten the practice for the rest of time. That then you will just know 100,000% that this plus this plus this will always equate this. The beauty in that, and it didn't bring up fear, it actually brought up quite joy. A lot of joy was going, wow, this is something that I can never become an expert in. This is something that is going to be a constant process, because energy is constantly shifting. Energy is constantly changing. The way that we have defined the many things that energy consists of is also even being rectified, revised, and shifted over time. Just think of like how maybe you may have even spoken about your own being or what you are sensing last week, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20. The way that we speak of our present existence or experience of existing will naturally shift, not just because we have lots of knowledge of our body and things. It's not like you're going, hey, how are you? And it's like, oh, well, I'm doing okay, but my lower mandible has strengthened and engaged, and so I know I'm going to be like this for a specific amount of time. The beauty that I found in subtle energy shifting and the constant guarantee that energy is changing. The beauty of that is in knowing that then nothing has to ever be finite, that you can always bring in that curiosity and going, really? Is that still what I believe? Is that still exactly how it is? Is that still exactly how I perceive? Or is there something more? Is there something else? Is there something that I might wish to lean into? And so for someone who loves to study and learn, it was a way to know, yes, this is something that can be ongoing. And how beautiful to have an ongoing study and process to be experiential and experienced together. So I thank you. I thank you for joining me in this new way of learning. And yes, know that I have much notes in front of me. And with any of my type of kind of energy classes, I may also take notes from what we talk about to kind of bring into other classes. But what really came up in even looking at that first question of why study was really kind of looking at why do we study things and why do we, and how have we been taught? How have we been shared to study or learn of things? And many times, in our educational systems, we are taught to learn of something for either, think of like grade school for a good grade, that you could actually like pass the grade or pass the class, and you know that there's a certain grade that was passing, and you had to hopefully have that or else you would be failing. And then you discovered that you're like, how were you graded? That, oh my goodness, yes, that grading system might not be as fair as we thought it was. And so it's like realizing that, maybe it wasn't accommodating for all the different ways we learn. All maybe the different ways that, especially when it comes to energy, it's not that, well, you can look on medias and mini medias and it might be different, but right, it's like that you're like, okay, give me the 3 things that I need to know about the unknown. Define, start. And then you'll write them down and you'll be like, okay, so Josie shared this is what is the unknown. And now I can either follow that and adhere to that because that feels somewhat resonant or somewhat interesting or intriguing, inspiring in some way. But then there might be a time later on that information doesn't feel resonant or intriguing or inspiring anymore. And so then what have we been taught, or, with all these different ways of learning, is we're like, oh, well, that I'm going to take that teacher, or I'm going to take that piece of information, and I'm going to cross out. Step 1 is no longer, it's redundant. Step 2 that they shared, maybe I might change the wording. And step 3, well, that's all gone. And so we get used to having to then continue to almost like feed that system of looking at going, how can we continue to, let's say, have a larger experience, a larger understanding, a larger expertise, so that we can share that we know what we are talking about. And so one thing that came up in this when I first kind of opened some of my previous channelings on sharing of these energy studies. Now just know, like, I'm a very slow teacher, a reluctant teacher, and I've written about this many times in my decades of teaching, that I will take my time before stepping into. So know that I've had channelings about sharing these classes for like probably the last 6 years. And I finally feel that I have the courage and the capacity, and it might be the right or okay timing to support further freer education about these things. One thing I first wish to address, even in that statement, is the freer education. A lot of times learning about subtle energy and I'm going like back in time, right? There was a need for it to be behind closed doors, due to potentially the political situations in the countries that the people resided in, be it in the religious tenets of an entire nation that didn't allow for different ways of experiencing or exploring the things not formed. And so, yes, I just want to take a deep honoring in a way that many ancestors, as well as even potential previous lifetimes of each and every one of us, that we have had to learn and study in mystery schools, in schools that went into these deep kind of subtle energy studies in very secret places and very kind of locked, closed doors, to ensure that information, right, or the understandings that were being explored and practiced and experienced within those schools could be maintained, that they would not be lost. And the beauty of where we are at now within society, as you see, within the multiple chaoses, within the multiple difficulties, and be it politics or nations or things like that, as well as the expanse of us being able to communicate online as such on these platforms, that there is something quite liberating, be it in my path and my multiple lifetimes, something that feels very accommodating and very liberating, as well as for my ancestors, to share of some of these teachings in this freer way. It's almost going, there is no need for us to keep this behind closed doors. There is a need for us to almost discuss this in our streets, to accommodate and bring the discussion of the subtle realms and practices of consciousness, the many planes of consciousness, the many worlds that can be experienced within the subtle realms, in ways that can be palatable and most applicable towards how we are moving through space and time now. Thank you for that little aside. And of course, that it is verbal. This is oral. As you see, we kind of, I will share some things, you will share some queries, some comments, and then hopefully we'll have further discussion in other times as well. So that in this kind of verbal way of moving through, we can discover the times when things might not feel or give us some certain unrest, and explore into those experiences together so that we can continue to learn how to refine vocabulary, to continue to learn how to discuss of these things in ways that don't feel archaic or contributing still to the systems that have not been supporting life. So, for someone who has had a very studious bookshelf and has always, even as a channeler and someone who connects to many most beloved and honorable ancestors and those wondrous divine and beings filled with light and care and compassion for, even if they are not or have been in human form, for humanity, uh, even of having all that information and access, okay, on a regular basis. I was someone that was like so entrained in that educational system that I'd be like, give me a book. Who wrote this book? You know, let me look at like their their levels of study, who they've practiced with. So please trust as well that I share all of that information for those who need it on my about page on my website for a very particular reason. Though I name the people that I have studied because there's an importance to honor the teachers, even if I am not teaching exactly what they're teaching of energy. Do you see that? To understand the range of studies that I have accommodated in these practices, as I said, from yoga, from Reiki, as well as with additional spiritual practices from some of the cultures of my ancestors, as well as the cultures of other indigenous practitioners or cultures outside of myself, so that I could then learn further beyond what I was gifted or given through my blood and bones. And I have learned over time, yes, to not necessarily always throw, I know it's always shared, like throw the baby out with the bathwater. So meaning like to throw all the good juice and the wondrous experiences that I have learned with specific teachers, even if I may not fully be there sitting at their feet still, learning from them now. Okay. So deep honor for always the teachers as well as the students that I have connected with in the past decades. I just always want to give a deep honoring for that, because that is how, in discussion as well as in queries and questioning, that I have learned further of what actually can be experienced and how can it be applied in real time beyond the pages of a book. And this is kind of coming up because so I turned into my channelings from like 6 years ago that were talking about these classes. And they share their like, outside texts may hold some keys of truth. If you wish, you can continue to search and slowly remember, or you can receive and open. Simple. I'll repeat that because I still need to, I'm like, I need to sit with this one too. So outside texts may hold some keys of truth. If you wish, you can continue to search and slowly remember, or you can receive and open. Simple. The answers are here for you when you wish. So the idea of D-School and why that statement of remembering our crafts is such an important statement that I have not been able to alter. And you'll see that I alter things many times as I change and shift how I may offer certain things. But in almost like the mission or the vision of D-School, vision sounds feels sweeter right now, was remembering your crafts, is to know that it is an ing process. It's a presence process. Whenever we work with words that add that ing, we know it is a practice of presence, right? Cooking, cleaning, all those fun things with the ing. And as soon as we get into the energy of ing, we know we are in that, we are doing that thing. We are actively participating in that thing. Even if we are cooking and simply just smelling the yummy thing that is coming out of the pot. That smelling, that hearing of the bubbles in the pan, right? It doesn't always have to even be the tactical or physical practice of the doing. It is a full-bodied sensory experience. And so a lot of it sounds like the initial practices that we'll do to get into some of these further discussions in these classes will be practices of presence. Yay. And that brings, as you can see, lots of big joy here. For, think of it. How hard is it to be in presence with maybe even 3 people in person, accommodating their sounds, their energies spoken and not spoken of, right? You could be like, how are you today? And they'll be like, I'm feeling blue. Or they might be saying, I'm feeling great, right? We have these such simple ways of communicating how we are in presence, how we are sensing and being aware of our body and space at a time. And so it can feel sometimes quite awkward to gather in presence. The practice of presence sometimes then can be quite scary. And so it might feel much nicer to, instead of being in presence and experiencing something together, to then go, you know what? I will take the replay, cool, experience a little of that, and then read my good text. So just know I'm the same way. A lot of the years of me moving through some of these practices and what was shared with my spiritual council as well as my ancestors, it is a conversation and discussion. And they very much tongue-in-cheek knew kind of that I was very ingrained from my schooling system to be a good student and to be a very keen student. I very much wanted to learn about this stuff because I had to figure out, I'm like, how and why am I here? Why am I here in this body and in this class system and this location in the world? And you know what I mean? And all of these things that seem so chaotic that have given me these level or amounts of circumstances and then have denoted or dictated that those circumstances or this identity, you know what I mean? Or these things that have been formed and defined are either good, okay, get the pass, get the green light, or not. And so we're continuously then kind of feeling and sensating around, going, okay, well then maybe there's an attraction to the things that are called the mystery. Maybe there's an attraction to the things that are in the subtle, because the things that are most obvious are not fun, are not exciting, are not encouraging me to explore further. They're actually, I'm almost feeling repelled towards maybe some of those things. And so no matter why we get into practicing or studying the most subtle, because the most subtle is, yes, the thing that is furthest and furthest from the thing that might be feeling the most obvious. But in order for us then to traverse and explore some of the energies that are the most subtle, we have to accommodate the most beautiful things that are most obvious and most defined in order to access more. So it is almost as if, this is so beautiful, one of the first queries for those that might not be here live that came was curiosity about the unknown, a desire to learn more about the tools and modalities available to us to communicate. Love this question. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And that curiosity of the unknown, as you see, might also just simply be, it's like what's anticipating something on the grass is greener or something, you know what I mean? The mystery. It sounds romantic. It sounds exciting and more exciting than what is most formed. But as we see then, as we step into the practice and process of becoming aware of all the things that have been formed, all the things that have been defined that make up the existence of presence, or the experience of presence. And then we bring in that we must communicate to each other in presence and try to speak and articulate of that experience. That's quite an intense, an immense ask. No wonder. Now you see, no wonder these schools were so private, because there might have just been so much timidity of going like, of how to even step in to speak of such an ask. And so to honor the tools and the modalities that you are guided along your process, to know that even if you may have thrown them out for a little bit, this is kind of what happens when we study energy over longer periods of times, right? Like you might have been interested or intrigued in one modality, got into it, and then something kind of turned you off on it. It could have been a teacher, it could have been an actual single experience, it could have been, you know what I mean? There's so many different things that come up when we learn. And so then we kind of push that and move that a little bit away. Or maybe there's even something around it, around the teacher or around the book that's on your shelf, right? That you're just like, oh, that I'm even looking at one right now. So I know I might have to open that after, right? It's just like, oh, maybe that's not needed anymore. Maybe that in itself is giving me hope or romanticizing something, and I need to be more aware of reality. So do you see that we are going to, when it comes into exploring subtle energy, what I would share as a good tenet is to acknowledge that if you dive into it full-heartedly, wholeheartedly, it is going to support better communications in real life. The whole purpose of subtle energy experience and knowing and you know what I mean? This, I'm trying to just like showing like, here, let's say this is like the most subtle, and then over here, right? This beautiful plant is the most formed. And this might be the plant energy here, right? So I could continue to connect to that plant over here as much as I wanted to, but there's going to be a time when all of this will give me more comfort into actually connecting to that form right here. So the beauty in me studying, yes, the subtle energies and those experiences at times were because I was scared, fearful to open my mouth in a group, to uncertain of how to communicate well or to share my truth. I'd always find my words would get garbled and they wouldn't come out of my mouth correctly. And so I enjoyed the studiousness, because then I was like, I'll know more. And then from that knowing more, I'll be able to articulate myself better in connections. And then I'll be able to feel less like forlorn or uncertain, or like, those rippled math, those aftermath effects from, miscommunications or mistranslations or garbled things. But and there was a lot of comfort there. And so to know that there's a place for this, because sometimes when we are also healing from, let's say, some very abusive ways of relations with people, or ways of communication that felt quite harmful to our bodies and to our minds, or to our emotional well-being, there sometimes is, like kind of going, throw yourself in or go step back into a cave. And the nice thing is that at least I found within that times when I stepped into that cave, that I was able then to be in communication and be in relation in those most subtle realms. And what I discovered in those most subtle realms is that those realms were very different than some of these very formed realms, let's say our society at large, that there was deep, deep respect for free will. There was deep, deep honoring of consent, multiple points of checking in if you consent. Now, I'll give you an example of this. Like when I was first channeling some very beautiful beings, most divine, most beloved, at a very younger age, right? When I was like still listening to those subtle energies and thinking, they know more than I. So I must be subservient. I'm lower than them on the hierarchical scale of knowledge, right? Healing from the ways of authoritarian or hierarchical ways that we have, like, put people up on pedestals who knew more. And so I was there, unbeknownst to me, putting up these spirits and those beings not in form, and sometimes those beings that never were human to begin with, up on a greater pedestal than I. And then listening and doing and adhering to everything they said like it was law or another rule to follow. And so I started to learn with their gentle coaxing, because they're very gentle, free will and consent, right? There's going to be a very gentle coaxing amidst all those shadows and things to unravel within my human experience. Was to go, okay, like here, none of that's important, but we'll share with you some things. Know that it's not a law. It's not another doctrine for you to follow. Oh, that's a big one. I feel that one. And you can question it, and you can continue to open and receive more information. It can become a conversation instead of me listening and going, and this is what I hear a lot of times when people first connect to subtle energies. They want to connect with spirit, that large umbrella term, right? And then they'll be like, hello, hello, hello. And then that, spirit answers and it's like, go brush your teeth. And then you're like, okay. And then you come back. Okay, I did that. Hello, hello, hello. And they'll be like, go jump on your head. And you'll be like, okay, I'm going to do it. And so it's not that blind trust in the unknown. I just want to be very clear with that. That if that comes up within your processes in presence as you continue to explore those things most subtle and most potentially not in form, we sometimes then give them greater gravitas than what we may to if we were talking or speaking to someone on the street, even if they were a person at a time that we would have been talking to on a street. And so the beauty of knowing that there's a space that shares and honors deep tenets of free will and consent, it was a beautiful, beautiful unlearning ground for me to slowly move through the authoritarian, the colonial, right? All of those big things, the capitalist ways that we have had ingrained in type of our ways of learning and system, or ways of kind of like the student-teacher relations. And so when I would kind of like get those queries from those beautiful beings and channels, and I'd ask them a question, and they'd share with me these really simple responses. And then, of course, I'd be like, okay, should I just take it as that? And like some of their answers at that time, because they knew my process, of course, would be, well, Josie, you can go Google it. You can go research it. You can go find all the books that, you know what I mean, that your heart pings from this conversation that you had, or this experience, okay? More so, not just the conversation you had, but the experience you had in the conversation, the full-bodied experience from the emotions, the feelings, the hearing, the sensing of what the body is doing, right? Our body in an experience, I'm just kind of trying to show it, right, energetically. But there's going to be times, even dependent on the sounds and the words that come out of my mouth about energy, your body at times will feel like it starts to get tight, or closed in places or tough, or there might be times when it feels like it blips, like actually that's a quick thing, right? It might be like little jumps or like pressures, and you're like, oh, what's that? Sometimes people will feel them very viscerally, right? Like I felt at times when I've had such a deep response to something that we're discussing in energy that I'll literally like, oh, right? Like you'll feel like that movement. And then, or, right, everybody wants to get to this part. And you'll just feel the expanse. You'll feel the expanse. You'll feel the expanse, but then you'll be like, oh, wait, I feel all the expanse, which has made like maybe this area feel more contained. And so we then have to become aware too that those feelings of expanse will potentially also happen simultaneously while you'll also feel areas contained. And when we feel two things happen concurrently or simultaneously within an experience that might also bring up difference, it can be a discombobulating experience, especially for those of us that might be a little bit more uncertain of moving with those energies that are in motion or the emotions and the feelings that come up with them. So now we see, yes, it's going to be nice to have some time away between classes, to understand that there is no need to learn it all now. Because even if I gave you every single piece of information I knew and just like regurgitated, like, okay, are you ready? You know what I mean? And then you're like, okay, I got it all. Whoo, whoo, whoo. Huge effort. Oh my gosh, we finished it. Every single thing that you've learned about subtle energy, you shared within 2 hours. Oh, but wait a second. That's just knowledge. And I know we've put knowledge on a pedestal, but knowledge needs to be experienced. It needs to be understood. I keep feeling this. It needs to be chewed upon. It needs to be potentially, you put it into your mind and then you see where it kind of stops. And then you put it in and you're like, okay, how can I maybe experience it while moving my mouth? How can I experience it while moving my hands? How can I experience it while gardening? How can I experience it while walking? How can I experience it while bathing? How can I experience it? What comes up when I'm chewing and eating food with this experience? There's going to be many different ways to apply a very simple experience, right? A very simple teaching, multiple ways. And so please trust that this stuff, yes, will kind of make you at times feel like, have we spoken of anything? We have spoken of everything. You might feel like moments of like, whoa, I understand, or whoa, I don't understand where we're going, and we get better in pulsing. We get better together in learning how to still be here amidst those multiple experiences in. And to trust, as my spirit team did share with me, we know, Jose, you're going to do some Googling and some exploring on your own. Just because we shared with you that it's going to be a slower pace, that doesn't matter, right? Because sometimes a slower pace is good. I always feel that way with like, and I don't know if you're able to mention like things exact on YouTube, but I'm presuming you might be. But it's like that movie Clockwork Orange, when like they had their eyes opened and were just like shown all this information and images to take in until finally, like, that was supposed to like change their brain and change their mind and all of that stuff, right? And I wish to share of knowledge in a way that is not trying to obliterate the knowledge that you already carry. And I want to share of knowledge in a way as well that is not there sharing that is the end goal. We can continue to take in knowledge on a daily basis, but it's our way and of processing and of that, processing the experience of knowledge that can support us then in taking all of that into potential an understanding that is beyond the mind, but also felt within our body. And then known and realize that we're like, oh my gosh, we don't have to contain it here. Then no wonder if we feel it here, we don't have to even just contain it in our body. I don't have to hold it. This was something in like one of my tattoos of the ginkgo biloba that I have on my back to always remind me, because like the ginkgo biloba was known as this beautiful knowing tree, one of the oldest trees that is, grown here on this planet. And how this ginkgo biloba, though, every season, right? The leaves change color and they blow off to remind me that, right? Like knowledge is not meant to be contained. It's meant to be communicated about. It's meant to be, right, shared. And so may we continue to share of this knowledge together, and to see then in the sharing and the releasing of it, of going, right, I don't need to contain this. It's not secret. I can share it to the earth. I can share it to the water when I'm bathing. I can share of it a little to a friend of mine if I so wish. We can speak as well and maybe foster relations here if you don't have some friends to share it with. Oh, yes. It was a creepy movie. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, 1972 film. That was Clockwork Orange was a nutty one. Yeah. But it still like has such a good precedence because it was showcasing, rebels thinking differently than what was the norm then. And a lot of times with subtle energy study, that is the history, right? Is that it was becoming aware of much more than what is, and know that that type of knowledge for many, many decades or many centuries was quite volatile and would have been quite rebellious or traitorous almost to the tenets that kept the knowledge, right, of a country or a society or a system in place. And so, yes, welcome. We get to be some good rebels in a way of discovering ways to study and practice while honoring our agency, honoring our choices and decisions on the day, and to know that yes, those simple, now when they share, you can receive an open, simple. The answers are here for when you so wish. Those answers in the simplicity. And this is, we may have to move into this by next class. I love how kind of where we're leaving off here, because it's almost giving me a little thing to chew on for next class, is to realize that it's because of also the simplification of language, right? A lot of answers. So let's say, and I'll give an example of this if I can. When we have knowledge, right, or lots of knowing, and we choose to write a book about that knowledge, we have a lot to say. We have a lot of things that we have studied. Like I remember Deep Gratitude, and I have some of the books listed that I do have on my bookshelf. I should probably update that on my site. It's under the Connector Contact page. That one of those that I've studied in person with Christopher Wallace was also a scholar and of Tantra philosophy of yoga, which is now this is not a philosophy like how they show it in like what's become popular in these, weird new age groups or things. Okay. Tantra philosophy is a lot about consciousness and mind and allowing yourself to, from these understandings and of things, to understand how to shift perspective. It's deep mental work. So like Deep Gratitude, to see the scholar that I would meet with, different times to do these experiential practices with, of meditation, of presence, as well as discussion, right, of these larger things, these bigger things that sometimes we feel are untackleable. And then to see that, wow, he finally wrote a big book. And it was a big book, Tantra Illuminated by Christopher Wallace. It's like probably this thick in real life. So I think I got it as iBook just for ease, because I was traveling a lot at the time. And so beautiful to be able to sift through a person's body of knowledge over time. And so to think of, okay, so we had all that knowledge, get a big book, right? So think of this like tripled, quadrupled, blah, 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 of all these words. And then we go into the subtle. Okay, so this is us trying to define something that is most subtle. A lot of words. And then we move into the subtle. And what we receive there is like 1, 2, 5 words. And then we look at those 1, 2, or 5 words as something that carries gravitas, like how we look at Twitter or how you look at, like those new directives or like quotes, the quotable things that like, this is like the word. So in simple, even though it might be refined, think of simple as symbol, SYMBOL. That the more refined something becomes, it carries all of that in what has been defined. So that simple or that thing becomes very symbolic. And it does not have to be taken at point blank or face value or all those ways of us just looking at it and going, okay, let's look at the definition. And I do that a lot of times. I'll first look at the definition if I get a specific word shared to start the unpacking and to experience it through the breathing process and my body in space and over time and in different times and places and different ways of movement, right? Until that starts to unpack in multiple ways. And I discover then I can apply that here, in all these different circumstances. And I think that's the thing that I love most about subtle energy practice, is that in the simplicity or in the symbolicness, or I don't even know the word, the symbolic way of study and experiencing these realms and planes, is that as we bring them, we don't stay there, we bring them into the most real. And then discover that that thing that felt so simple or out there or unknown or mysterious in its simplicity becomes applicable in multiple ways and circumstances. And that then brings an understanding of something that could feel most macro or most micro in the simplicity of it into how we can apply it to how I speak to someone at the store, apply it to how I share my boundaries to another person, of how I share. Do you see all these different things that are quite more important in our movements in, let's say, the day to day? So yes, it encourages me where we're going with these conversations. I thank you so much for bringing in this first big query, because yes, be curious. We can stoke our curiosity about the unknown or the most subtle or the things that are most not formed. And to allow that curiosity to almost be like, it's not that we're needing it to, like, I get, like how like a kid needs then sometimes like when they lose that curiosity or that interest, that then like someone's going, hello, something shiny's over here, right? Come this way, and trying to entice us back into the realms of the ethers. When in actuality, I find the thing that keeps me coming back towards the most subtle is actually seeing how I have applied it in the most real, in the most formed. And there is this beautiful, like, of why they shared that there is such a kind of a boon or an accessibility now to freeing up education. And you'll see this. And I've already been seeing this, which is really exciting. There's another Patreon called Popol Na that I'm following. I don't know if you can see who I follow on Patreon or not, but who are sharing on YouTube free educational videos on decolonizing time, our concept of linear time, and teaching from their indigenous ancestors of the Mayas, and to understand different ways of understanding how time can be even addressed and seen and perceived. Love this mind-blowing stuff. So I really do. I want to, it's almost like sharing that I'm not the revolutionary one. It just simply is the timing. It's the timing for further freeing of certain education, so that we can support bringing some of these wondrous energetic information into and for many more that may not have had, let's say, the accessible rights, RITES, to access those mystery schools, the finances, or even the joy of the structure of it, to move through. So I'm very encouraged by this conversation, and I thank you all who did tune in for the first one. And look forward to seeing what comes up. Know that within these videos, as I shared, what I'll do is I will post a link to the replay for each class, and kind of a little blurb of what we discussed on the Patreon, for all free members, all members, free and paid, of course, who are contributing and supporting D-School, so that then we can follow and do more Q&As there in the comments section as needed, in between connections. And I look forward to seeing how this goes. But yes, most definitely what will be addressed is that level of simplicity, to know that level of simplicity in word and language that sometimes might be shared is not concrete. It's not meaning that is like definite. It needs to be very clear, because our vocabulary and our language is always changing as we evolve as a people, as a humanity, right? We have discovered ways of speaking about individuals and people in more deep honor and respect than we may have 50 years ago, 100 years ago, right? Things have changed. So know that the beauty of that simplicity is that it's open to interpretation, as well it is quite symbolic. And when I bring up the meaning or the understanding of symbolism, uh, for example, with Reiki, right? In teaching Reiki, I was gifted a certain number of symbols to share with people, as well as, and those symbols were ways to support a very large understanding of energy that could also have been explored over many years together, right? It's kind of like a compact information that it was going, okay, here, take this symbol, boop, and in that symbol, you can unpack all of that information, even if we're not together for the next 5, 10, 20 years. You can explore all of the understandings and ways you can apply that symbol energetically, emotionally, mentally, physically, experientially, all the things, to discover what is shared within that. Do you see? And so even with Usui, he would like in the way that there was trainings in that energy practice prior, it became more regimented, just dependent on how society was needing or wishing to learn or be educated or certified or experted at that time. Yes, I make up lots of words. And so trust that we may, and this is kind of like the last little tenet of just going, we may readdress things. So meaning, like, I may come up and go, hey, we are going to address energy consumption. This is something very big that I've been wanting to address for a long time. So I'm also putting that out there for our further classes, but to know that then that's not like there's going to be one class on the topic of consumption. We can continue to revise, refine, and further explore, right? What arises in the now. In the now. So I am so proud of myself. I did a proper hour and a half. If you have been just tuning into the last bit, trust that this will be on replay. Let's take a moment, though, to acknowledge we are in these bodies. Did we forget to breathe for a moment? Sometimes when I get really excited and I start to share things, right? I'm like, all right, ha, 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 ha. Yes, breath. Breath, breath. When people are sharing, all these things about vibrational energy is good. You need more of that in your life. Guess what? All you need to do is breathe. How wondrous that we have the gift of breath. How wondrous at this moment in time that our bodies are well enough to be here in somewhat of comfort and discomfort. How wondrous that we are able to listen at a semblance and percentage of listening in at this time without multiple distractions outside of us, or even multiple chaotic things that are outside of our control and maybe even there for our harm. How wondrous to feel that we are in a safer space. And as we honor our living energy, as we honor our breathing bodies and our capacities at present, we can allow some of the energy that we felt we took in this experience, or digested, ingested, breathed in. We can allow some of that to filter out, to move through the pores of our skin into the space around us, to be shared through our feet to the earth. To filter beyond the capacity or the acknowledgement of how large our mind or consciousness is, to allow it to filter beyond those limits and realms of what mine is and yours or ours are. To choose to share, release, let go of some of the knowledge contained in, and to know that we will not lose our understanding, but we will allow more space for wisdom to develop and to be cared for. May we honor those that have walked before us, our teachers, the students, the many wondrous beings and people that have communicated and interacted and engaged, and even those that have disengaged. And as we honor those that have walked before us, may we honor those that also have passed before us. Some of those that we may have spoken of that may have even passed for their causes or the maintenance and care of sacred knowledge to be brought forward through our bodies over time. Deep gratitude and honor to those that have passed on. Deep gratitude to those that are within the planes to support these realms. May we continue in our practices of presence to allow that in. Hmm. May you nourish, may you give yourself squeezes, may you tend and care to your wondrously human self. As we continue to explore together through this season, the beauty of the energies that allow us to do this wondrous work on these planes, and to move and continue to refine and to share within our actions, our voice, and the ways that we communicate to our world and to the communities and the places that we are in. How to support more of that wondrous personal agency, that autonomy, that respect for difference. And may we honor and allow the changes that come with the movements of the days and our breaths. Thank you all for tuning in for this first connection. I look forward to seeing you. It looks like for this month, it will be next week and the week after that. So for 3 weeks. So it looks like for D School will either be 2 to 3 lives per month. And for this month, you'll see the times, and they may shift dependent as time changes or things like that occur within the seasons. But I endeavor for this to be a place where we can continue to learn together. So I always encourage questions, as well as look forward to what occurs within the spaces between and what may feel that it inspires me forwards or not. Something may need to be rectified or clarified. You never know. You're welcome to subscribe here to see further videos. And of course, as I've mentioned multiple times, I think actually on this, that Patreon will continue to share further study prompts for all free members. And then I have simplified the contribution tiers to make it easier for us all. So you're welcome to take a look at it's a simple D School patron tier, which is at a very low amount. And then also an ancestral group connection tier, where we get to step in with our ancestors in those subtle realms monthly. And yes, I see the hands, get to connect and learn with them. Take care. Deep, deep love to you all. Thank you. Bye.